Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Distributing Consumer Products in an E-commerce World, Accommodating a Direct-to-Consumer Sales Channel. Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. We will be recording today's presentation, and since we want to make sure it's a clear call for everyone, attendee phones are muted, but we encourage you to use the Q&A feature to enter your questions throughout the presentation. We'll address as many as possible by the end of the webcast. We'll also be sending this recording out to all attendees within the next few days, so if you want to view this again or share it with your colleagues, you'll certainly be able to do so. During today's webcast, we'll start off by taking a look at the industry and where it's headed in regards to distributing consumer products in an e-commerce world. We'll dive into how you can successfully accommodate a direct-to-consumer sales channel, and then, like I mentioned, we'll wrap up with any questions from the audience. So just to give you a little background on your presenters for today, Ken Wygand is a solutions architect for Appian Apprise ERP. Ken has worked with the Apprise ERP solution for the past 19, almost 20 years. He's spent the last 17 years consulting with consumer goods importers and distributors to define best practices and provide countless organizations with industry-specific solutions that cater to their unique requirements. We'll also be hearing from Clint Boaz, Senior Sales Engineer at ProShip. Clint has been showing organizations how to create economic and operational efficiencies with shipping and logistics technologies since 2002. Clint's work has spanned all industry segments, domestically and internationally, from small startups to the most recognized brands in the world. So all that said, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ken to get us started. Ken?
Thank you, Lauren, and good afternoon or good morning and good evening, depending on which part of the globe you're joining us from. As mentioned, today we'll be exploring distributing consumer products in this e-commerce world that we all live in today. I think it's safe to say that in recent years, there's been a surge in direct-to-consumer shipping among retail distributors. Look at the way in which many of us research and ultimately purchase consumer products these days. Speaking for myself, it's become all too easy to place an order with Amazon knowing that it's going to arrive in a day or two. And these days, there are just so many more e-commerce retailers out there, many of them offering quick and typically free shipping. Again, order it, get it in a day or two. It's at my doorstep. I don't have to go anywhere. So as you can see, e-commerce is becoming the preferred method of shopping, growing over 23% in 2018 alone. And it's not a trend that has just started. It's been growing at an average rate of over 25% between the years 2014 and 2017. And it's not anticipated to end anytime soon. It's projected to have growth of over 21% in 2019 and double-digit growth as well in the years to come. So with that growth, based on my experience, I've seen a shift in most every consumer product distributor that I've engaged with. The traditional model of exclusively fulfilling bulk orders, picking full cases, building pallets, shipping truckloads of products to big box distribution centers is no more. That's not exclusively what they're doing these days. Now you're fulfilling thousands of small individual orders that are being shipped direct to the consumer, and small being, it could be one unit of one item going to a consumer, and again having thousands of those types of orders. Some refer to this as being a drop ship vendor. You're drop shipping goods to the consumer on behalf of those e-commerce retailers, the Walmart.coms, the Costco.coms, and such of the world. And as well these days, if you've got a brand, even doing that on behalf of your own consumer websites. So again, instead of picking 50 identical bulk distribution center type orders, you're now picking 50 unique orders, each with their own quantities and items and requirements, and what label has to go on it, what type of service are we using, what does the pack slip need to look like, what does the box even that I'm putting it in need to look like. So this presents a number of challenges. It's a different ballgame to be playing in. We can look at order volume. That is significantly increasing. Again, now you're processing thousands of small individual orders and on a daily basis. I've even seen spikes where we've had upwards of 10,000 plus orders waiting to be processed, come Monday morning when everyone walks in the door. And that alone being from a single retailer, and especially as you get around the holidays. I mean, that type of volume, that's just a lot of orders to manage, and you want to be doing so efficiently. And along with that, if you're doing fulfillment for these e-commerce retailers, you've got their requirements that you need to adhere to, and there's an ever-growing list of those requirements. They want inventory availability information, so up on the website they can say, yeah, there's 10 left or 50 left. Hey, you better buy it soon. They want things like order confirmations. They want to know what the status of that order is. Is it back ordered? Do you have it? Can you ship it? What's the price, etc. Compliance labels, branded pack slips, as I've mentioned, and it doesn't end there. And you probably know better than I do, but if you don't meet all of their requirements and you don't get some type of exception officially from them, you're going to be facing fines. All too often, they'll take deductions on the backside when they go to pay you, and at that point, you realize you didn't make any money. You lost money on that sale. With all these orders, warehouse operations, being efficient out on the floor, is important as well. When you've got thousands of these direct-to-consumer orders to fulfill, you don't want to be picking and packing and labeling each of these orders individually. And depending on the product or the retailer, you might have added complexities that you need to address. Things like, is your product breakable? Perhaps it's ceramic or glass, some delicate in some respect, and it has to survive being shipped small parcel. Again, you're no longer, building pallets and it's going via truck courier, to their distribution center. You've got to worry about it being thrown around, if you will, ultimately until it arrives on their doorstep. Or it could even be they've got special packaging requirements, from the perspective of, and maybe I'll use Amazon as an example, they're frustration-free packaging, or again, do you want retail packaging? So again, more complexities that that we've got to adhere to, and that really can hinder, if you will, or be a challenge within the warehouse. Also, you've got to be concerned about shipping methods and costs. Whether you're fulfilling orders for the, again, third-party websites, the Walmart.coms and Costco.coms of the world, or again, your own consumer-facing websites, unless your product is large, whether that be in size or weight, like a pool table, your small parcel volume has likely increased and increased, by factors of, hundreds of percent. As an example, I've had folks that they used to ship, years back, they used to ship a handful of small parcels a day, a couple of boxes going UPS. Now they're filling entire UPS trailers, FedEx trailers each day, with parcels going out the door. So very, very different world that they live in. So you not only need to be efficient in terms of generating those small parcel shipments, getting the labels, applying them, but you also need to be concerned about selecting the appropriate carrier and the level of service. You've got things to keep in mind, like freight costs and transit times. Yes, we've got a commitment to get it there in 2 days, but I don't want to break the bank to do so. And even the third-party websites, you need to be flexible enough to really adhere to the requirements that they're placing upon you. They may force you to ship prepaid under their account with the small parcel carrier. They may want you to print return labels, put them in the box, and really at that point handle any carrier and level of service that they're offering to their consumers. So these days, again, we've probably all seen it. U.S. Postal Service shows up at my door these days probably more than UPS and FedEx. So you've got to be flexible and be able to handle whatever it is they're throwing at you. So it's critical that you have systems that are designed for this direct-to-consumer shipping model. Systems that can address these challenges and more, whatever might come in the future, without adding hours of manual work, or worse, increasing headcount. Let's just add 5 more individuals to the warehouse staff to keep up with the volume. You don't want to be doing those things. So you need systems that can address the increase in order volume. You want to get these orders into the system efficiently. You want them as well to be validated and only bring to your attention exceptions that are known. Again, you've got hours to get these orders out the door at times, so every minute counts, and you need to be 100% accurate, or again, on the backside, they're just waiting to hit you with fines and penalties and not pay you for the goods. So again, you really need to be on top of your game, and again, you don't want to be adding man hours, if you will, to the process. So you want integrated EDI within your ERP. You want to be able to directly receive the orders into your ERP and do so all automated. You don't want to be utilizing third-party EDI solutions where you're then managing integrations and something can break down there, or worse yet, having to manually key information if you're using like a web portal based EDI. Think about it, thousands of orders, and we've got to rekey them all into our ERP. That's, when you've got 5 hours to ship an order out the door, you don't have that kind of time. As I mentioned, validations. You want to have the system validate the orders. Look for issues. Things like validating the consumer's address. Where are you shipping the product to? Is that a valid residential address that can be delivered to? If not, it'd be nice to know that on the front side versus getting a box returned to your facility. And if not that, getting hit with, again, fines and penalties, and typically they're not from the carrier alone, but also from your customer. Again, the Walmart.coms and Costco.coms of the world. So you want your ERP, again, to have integrated EDI, but also perform validations, not just limited to addresses, but pricing, terms, etc. And again, only bring to your attention the exceptions. So again, we're talking about letting orders that are clean, that are good, 100% okay, just flow through the system, go on to the next step, not have to, again, involve a human to work with those orders. You also want systems that can produce all the data, labels, and paperwork that the retailer requires. Again, back to that retailer compliance. And you also want to do so, or have the system do so, at the appropriate times that they are needed. Things like labels and pack slips and such, you don't want to print them out at 8 a.m. this morning when they're not needed until 3 p.m. when the boxes finally make it to the pack station. That you've got to manage paperwork now and sort it and collate it, and you just don't want to be doing those things. So again, meeting those retailer requirements, you want systems that allow you to produce all those outbound EDI communications that they're now asking for. Again, inventory advices, order confirmations. Even these days, if they are offering ship to store or pick up at store to their consumer, you've got added requirements now of not only handling all the EDI communications, not only making sure you get a UPS label on the box and get it there in 12 or 24 or 48 hours, but now also have to get a compliance label, a UCC 128 label on the store, so that once it gets there, they can scan and receive and ultimately know the consumer that it's for. And I've mentioned a couple of times already, but those branded pack slips, where ultimately the box needs to look like it came from Wayfair.com, Hayneedle.com, Walmart.com. You need to be able to produce those documents again at the appropriate time, but also have them produced by your ERP system. I can tell you, and you probably don't want to know, but how many times I've walked into distributors that they're retrieving these retailer branded pack slips from web portals. So yet another step in the process. Someone has to go to a web portal and print these documents, again, merge them, collate them, get them to the pack station so they can be placed in the boxes. That's just very inefficient. So again, you want an ERP that's going to be able to retrieve or produce those documents right out of the system. And again, right when you're ready to put that item in a box or seal up that box, not have to manage paperwork before or after. Again, you want systems that can provide efficiencies in the warehouse, and part of that is being integrated within the ERP. Again, we're talking hours to process an order and get it out the door. If we're manually keying orders in and we've got to, throw them over the fence, integrate them into a third-party, bolt-on WMS, and then get information back as we finish out the process, again, we're dealing with integrations. There's, we could have data issues, but also, again, we're back to, we've only got hours to get that order out the door. We don't have time to to deal with those things. So you want systems that are going to allow you to increase order volume without increasing headcount. Again, we're back to thousands of orders that need to be processed. So you want to have a system that allows you to utilize replenishment strategies. You want to be able to replenish based on actual order demand, as well as other strategies as well. Top forward pick or primary pick bins off and things such as that. But you want to be able to to replenish based on actual order demand. You want to be able to replenish or have replenishment going on, at the same time orders are being picked. If we're running short, we're using the last couple of units in that forward pick location. I want the system to kick out a replenishment activity, get that direct to the appropriate individual, the material handler, and have them start bringing that pallet up. So the next picker that comes along, boom, that pallet's there. They can just keep on moving. You also want to have the ability to bulk or batch pick. I don't want to be, these thousands of consumer orders. I don't want to be walking the aisles individually for each order. I want to be able to bulk or batch pick, and whether it's 25, 50, 100, 200 of them at a time. I want to be able to walk the aisles once and pick everything I need for those, let's say, 50 orders. Bring it back to a pack-out area, touch it one more time, and be done with it. Now, depending on the warehouse, depending on the products, how many items average per order, maybe utilizing pick to cart or pick to tote strategies would be better. Again, you want a system that's going to give you all those options. Have them there at the ready, and you choose as part of the your operating procedures which method you're going to utilize. And again, systems that provide for advanced shipping options. So you want to have a solution that is going to have integrated a shipping solution. All too often I've walked into warehouses and seen that they're using carrier-specific software, meaning they've got stations where they've got UPS World Ship loaded up on machines, and yet other machines where they've got FedEx's software and so on. And at that, it's not seamlessly integrated into their ERP, meaning they're leaving their ERP to process this shipment at that point, in the small parcel solution, and then worse yet, once they finish there, they have to get information back into their ERP, things like tracking information. Typically, you're going to need that for advanced ship notices, and at the very least, for your customer service staff to be able to look up. So again, you don't want to be doing that. We're talking about now, manually populating information again. That's just a bomb waiting to go off. Again, those retailers are waiting for you to transmit something that's incorrect, so that they can hit you with more fines. So again, you want your ERP to be seamlessly integrated with a shipping solution that requires no manual entry of information, to process that order. And you want to process the order in your ERP and have those parcel labels, tracking information, and freight charges to be, again, captured at the point they're generated. I'll throw in the mix there, multi-carrier support. As I mentioned, a couple of them earlier, Postal Service, UPS, and so on. You want a system, a seamlessly integrated system that's going to handle all of your needs. Again, we don't want to have, oh, it's going UPS. We got to put it on the conveyor that's diverted off to the left, and it's going to bring it to a UPS station and or a FedEx station and such. We want one solution to handle everything. And if you have needs, for things like rate shopping, again, you want that solution to handle that as well. Again, if you're doing things like needing to identify the best way or least costly way to get the parcel to the consumer, again, if it's that order is being taken on your own website, you want that system to handle that as well. And in addition, again, if you're fulfilling orders for the third-party websites, they're dictating to you how to ship it, but you need to have a system that can handle that, and again, do those additional provide those additional capabilities, such as prepaid under their account, return labels, and some of those others that I've mentioned already. So again, we want to have really systems in place that are encompass all of these challenges, address all of these challenges, so that we're very efficient from point of receiving the order to the point of having it boxed up, labeled, ready to go out the door. So that being said, I'll now turn the stage over to Clint.
All right, Ken, thank you. Great information. And I'm glad to be talking to everybody out there today on this topic of B2C e-commerce selling and fulfillment. It's a great time to be in this market. It's growing, like Ken has discussed, plenty of opportunity, and that's evidenced by the great turnout we've had on the webinar today. This e-commerce is changing the way we all consume products. It's going to continue to change as new platforms, new technologies come out, as we see consumer expectations and demographics shift. And it changes the way that businesses sell and distribute products. So I want to start out just by saying that if you're opening up a B2C e-commerce site, whether that's drop shipping for another seller like the Walmart.coms of the world, or if you're selling direct to consumers, there are a lot of considerations when it comes to engineering the right shipping procedures. And it's important that early on you have a vision. You put the right systems in place, you put the right processes in place from the beginning. So that way you aren't scrambling to put those systems in place and to try to change processes after your volume's picked up, when it's much harder to do that and when your business is in full swing. Every day we're talking with customers, shippers that have outgrown their shipping processes, and now they're scrambling to get enhancements implemented before that looming deadline of the next peak season's upon them. So doing it right from the get-go is certainly ideal. And what I want to focus on today, specifically as it relates to shipping, are three cornerstone areas of a great technology-enabled shipping process. And those are managing shipping charges, which has to do with how you quote and how you account for shipping rates throughout the entire life cycle of an order. The next one is achieving operational efficiency. That's affected a lot by your warehouse workflows, your shipping system. And then finally, focusing on customer experience, which has a lot to do with tracking visibility and giving customers options. And there are definitely a lot of other areas in fulfillment that we can talk about, like supply chain design, inventory management, picking the right key performance indicators. But these three subjects are key when it comes to shipping execution. It's our focus at ProShip. And when I've consulted with shippers in the past about their shipping processes, I always wanted to make sure that they had technology and solutions in place that covered these three areas. These are things that you've likely been doing as a B2B shipper, but as you move into B2C, like Ken has discussed, a lot of the parameters and a lot of the assumptions change. So this first cornerstone, managing shipping charges, one of the first things that we're going to talk about here with e-commerce in one of the most important questions is, who's paying for the shipping charges? And how is that handled in the e-commerce transaction with the customer? If you're shipping B2B or if you're doing drop shipping for another seller, that probably has not been a consideration. In those cases, it's common for the other company to just have you bill shipping charges to their carrier accounts. You just need to make sure that your shipping systems honor the other company's routing instructions. And that's important. You want to automate that as much as possible. You want to automate that routing guide into your shipping process. But it's less complicated than if you're entering direct B2C e-commerce for yourself, because now you have to figure out for yourself, what do you charge the consumer for shipping, and what options do you provide as part of the checkout process on your e-commerce site? And it's important to get that right, because first off, it's true you're probably going to achieve higher margins with direct B2C selling, but the shipping costs can quickly eat up and reduce those margins. But second off, all of the industry surveys reveal how important it is to get this aspect right. Take a look at some of these statistics here. For example, average online shopping cart abandonment rate is 69%, with the number one reason for abandonment being that extra costs are too high. So costs like shipping, taxes and fees are too high, leads to high cart abandonment rates. But on the flip side, if you give the consumer options during checkout, good things happen. 86% increase in sales, 75% reduction in cart abandonment. So you want to get that right. And there are almost an infinite number of ways that you can handle shipping charges in e-commerce. You can do free shipping under certain conditions. Offering a flat rate is very popular. You could do a percentage of the order total. You could calculate actual shipping costs. Or you could do kind of like Amazon has done with Prime, and you make the focus more on delivery within a certain number of days. So currently 2-day delivery with Prime, soon to be, as they've recently announced, 1-day delivery. And there are a lot of factors you have to take into consideration when you're choosing an approach. Like, what are your competitors doing? What type of goods are you shipping? What are the financial aspects? Those are all things you want to get right for the health of your e-commerce business. But it's also important that you know that what you have promised to the customer on the front end, your shipping and execution systems can deliver on the back end, further downstream in the process. So for example, if you promise that 2-day shipping, can you execute on 2-day shipping in a cost-efficient manner? And when we talk about managing shipping charges, the conversation always very quickly turns to the subject of rate shopping. It's where we're comparing rates across carriers and services and making a selection of a service for shipping out an order. And if rate shopping is going to be part of your fulfillment strategy, then it's important to understand the nuances involved. At ProShip, we found that there are actually multiple levels of rate shopping. And this slide is kind of busy. We normally would step through this in chunks, but it really talks about a progression through these different levels of rate shopping. And the first level is the simplest, and that's basic costs. That's where we're just looking at the service level that has the lowest cost, the cheapest service level. And shippers have been doing that type of rudimentary rate comparison for decades. And there are a lot of nuances involved. Most notably, cheapest does not always mean best. Selecting the cheapest does not necessarily mean that you're going to meet your customers' delivery expectations. So you might want to step it up a notch, and you might want to consider transit times for the services that you're comparing as well. If you've committed to that free 2-day delivery, maybe you only want to shop amongst services that offer that 2-day commitment time. And in a lot of cases, you're going to find that shipping through a less expensive ground service level is going to meet the committed delivery time just as well as an air service level, but at a much lower cost to serve. So rate shopping has a lot to do with more than just dollars and cents. It involves routing decisions, shopping based on speed, based on delivery commitments. From time to time, as we discuss, rate shopping with some of our customers, they're quick to say things like, "Well, we don't care about the cost," or we're only concerned about honoring our partners' routing guides or whatever, and they dictate the costs and the services that we should use. But then you also got to consider a lot of these decisions. You're making decisions that impact customer experience. When's the package going to be delivered? So it's really important to put all the factors into play when you're making a rate or a service selection, not just dollars and cents. And there's so many things in today's complicated logistics market that are considerations. So when you're trying to hit a delivery date, a target delivery date that a customer saw when they made their purchase, we want to take those things into consideration. And that leads us to a concept that we call advanced date shopping. With advanced date shopping, you capture the customer's delivery requirements, like the day they want the delivery to occur, or if it's a same-day delivery, the hour they want it to occur. And then you consider factors like what time of day are you going to print the shipping label? And how is that related to the time of the day that your carriers are going to pull their trailers out? You may be making a routing decision at 5 p.m., but if your carrier's already picked up their trailer at 4:30, you really need to consider that when you're making a rate shopping decision. Because if you choose that carrier, the reality is the package isn't going to move out the door till the next day, and you've lost a day in transit time, and that puts that customer's positive experience at jeopardy. And also, we're finding more and more that carriers are offering shippers a lot of flexibility these days on what constitutes a business day for pickup, for transit, for delivery. Some customers, for some shippers, are going to pick up on the weekends. Some are going to deliver on the weekends. Some are going to transit packages through their network on the weekends or on holidays, especially during that super weekend that leads up to peak season, that leads up to Christmas holiday. There's a lot of things that come into play there, and you want to get that right so that you can meet the customer's expectation. So you want to consider all those factors whenever you're making rating and routing decisions, and you want to choose services that serve the customer and that do that in the most economic fashion possible. You want to deliver on customer experience while protecting your profitability as a business. The last thing I'll talk about here on managing your shipping charges is getting a handle on the costs involved. If you're shipping more and more small parcels, do you and do your finance people understand all the elements that comprise shipping rate and the factors that impact those individual elements? Those elements are things like the published or base rate, the discount you've negotiated with the carrier, the fuel surcharge, special accessorial charges like additional handling or extra insurance, and then all those nasty penalties that can occur, things like address correction charges. And dimensions, how do dimensions impact your costs, and how do you handle that? Do your shipping systems have the ability to accurately quote your shipping charges, and do they have the business logic to help you minimize those charges when possible? Do you know if an address is commercial or residential before you create a shipping label? Can you correct any bad addresses up front and correct those and avoid those address correction charges? So really, there are 3 points in the life cycle of an order where it's possible that a rate is going to be calculated. That's at order entry time, when a customer places an order, shipping execution, when the label's created, and then when you get that final carrier bill. And I've always asserted that if you have a full handle on shipping charges in your operation, the rates calculated at those 3 milestones are going to match to the penny. You want to charge for shipping accurately. You want to minimize surprises when you get your carrier bill. And if you're collecting the data that you should, it's easy to audit and compare the rates that are being calculated at those checkpoints to make sure that you're achieving the profitability that's attainable. And especially if you're going to ever challenge a carrier on charges, or you're going to seek those guaranteed service refunds, having that data on hand is vital. To be informed is to be forearmed in that scenario. So the question here is, do you have reporting and analytics capabilities that allow you at a high level to view your data in aggregate? Do you have the ability to drill down on a more granular, detailed level on all the historical data that you're collecting relating to your shipping charges that your operations are creating? And those are all things that Apprise and ProShip can help with. All right, next milestone here, achieving operational efficiency. And achieving efficiency in your shipping operations is important. Like Ken said, you don't want to just throw more bodies at a problem as your volume grows. As you're moving from B to B, as you're moving to B to C directly, like Ken discussed, it's going to mean an increase in the number of orders of smaller quantities. And that translates directly to an increase in the number of parcels. So now you've got hundreds, you've got thousands, you got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of parcels to make shipping decisions on, to weigh, to get a shipping label. And as your operations grow, and we all hope they will, especially as you go into peak season, you need to have a workflow and a system in place that can get the shipments out the door as quickly, as efficiently as possible. There are a lot of process models on how you do your shipping, standard ways that shipping is done. There's front-of-line shipping, end-of-line shipping, conveyor-driven shipping, and we've got some other webinars and things that talk about those, and we'd be happy to share information on that with you. But all those different models have a set of common goals in common, and that's to reduce the handling of packages in the warehouse. You want to reduce the number of times that employees have to touch boxes. You want to reduce the number of decisions that employees have to make. You want to reduce the paperwork. You want to reduce manual key entries. You want to automatically adhere to business logic, like printing out those branded packing slips if you're fulfilling for another seller, for example. And the last one here that I want to drill down on just as an example, and that is reducing the number of software interfaces that employees have to interact with. Just show a real simple example of this in improving a workflow in the warehouse. Once orders have been released down to the warehouse, there's typically 3 steps that employees have to go through. They've got to pick the items, they've got to pack the items in a box, and then they have to ship that item and get the final shipping label. In a lot of cases, employees, when they're packing the box in this middle step, they're working inside an ERP or inside a WMS. And when they want to ship the box, they move over to software that's provided by the carrier or that's provided by a vendor. And they go through a set of steps again. They scan a license plate ID, they weigh the parcel, they make decisions on it, they ship the package and get the label. Or in worst case, they're pushing that box further down the stream, and then a dedicated employee does all that in another software interface. That employee doesn't do anything but just scan, weigh, ship all day long. And that means additional steps, additional labor, additional potential for error. So a more efficient workflow here is to combine the shipping and the packing functions into one step. Because if you have all the data at the pack station you need to ship a package, like the ship to address, weight, service level, you go ahead and ship it. Go ahead and get your shipping label. And you can combine the packing and the shipping functions into one seamless process so that once you pack out that carton in the WMS or the ERP, a shipping label just prints out. It's much more efficient in this case to black box that shipping step. And that's the type of experience that we see fulfilled all the time. That's what's been brought to bear in the partnership between Apprise and ProShip. They've taken the ProShip APIs, they've packaged them inside of their system, and it eliminates those manual steps and it improves the fulfillment of parcels. So that's one example, but it's a pretty common one, pretty good one. All right, when it comes to efficiency in your warehouse, the shipping system is a key part of that, and it should not be a bottleneck. It should be an enabler. So what do you look for in a shipping system? Speed is extremely important. The software should be able to handle your volumes no matter how high they get. You should be able to go into peak season knowing that your shipping software isn't going to choke. And related to that, look at how the software is designed. How much dependency is there on calls to external APIs, or how much intellectual property is part of that package that's external to the shipping software vendor versus what the vendor has control over? Because generally speaking, if a vendor has flexibility over that IP and over that code, they can make it perform very quickly. Scalability is important. You want the system to grow with your business. You don't want it to be a temporary fix for just getting you through your ramp-up e-commerce phase. As you grow from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of parcels a day, you want the software to scale with you. Carrier compliance is important. It's got to support the carriers you use, whether those are parcel carriers, freight carriers, regional carriers, same-day carriers, carriers in international markets that you may be selling in, like Canada or Europe or Asia. And then it's also shipping through brokers, if you happen to use those. Integration capability is very vital. You need a system to be tightly integrated to your back-end systems for reading information related to the order in, writing shipping information back, auto-enforcing your business rules, eliminating steps. And the software is probably going to need to support multiple workflows and multiple segments of your business. You may be venturing into B2C, but you probably still have a B2B segment somewhere that you need to support. And you've got different business rules that support those different segments. So is the software smart enough to know the difference, to know when additional paperwork is needed, like an ASN label or a branded packing slip, versus when it's not? And then finally, supports. When you face challenges, how's that software going to be supported? Do you have a vendor with onshore support that's got individuals in it who know the industry and who know your business? All right. Last cornerstone here that we'll talk about in last slide is focusing on the customer experience. And what we'll discuss here is visibility. Visibility deals a lot with shipment status, and there's external visibility and there's internal visibility. With external visibility, that's visibility directly to the customer. Does the customer know their status of their order at any given time? Are you feeding them tracking information through email notifications or by updating the status of their order in your e-commerce site? If you're doing it through email, how are you doing that? Are you just relying on the default emails that the carriers send, or are you creating a custom message and using that as another valuable customer interaction? On internal visibility, it has to do with visibility within your four walls. Does your customer service staff know the status of any specific order if a customer calls about it? And does your management team, like your logistics manager, customer service manager, do they have access to the status of all the outstanding orders that have been shipped in aggregate? So they know how their operations are going and they know if they're hitting key performance indicators. So the question there is, do you have a dashboard? Do you have a reporting function that solves those types of queries proactively and easily? And another important aspect of customer experience is returns. If you're shipping for another seller, the seller's returns policy is going to be in effect. But if you're selling direct, is your returns policy clearly defined, both in terms of the purchase transaction? Does the customer know what the policy is? And also in terms of the steps that a customer has to go through to return a package back to you. And once you get a return, do you have a good reverse logistics process in place to identify and to restock those returned items? Again, another great industry stat here, 66% of online buyers look at the returns policy before making a purchase. So having shipping systems and all right, so that completes the subject material that we wanted to cover and present today. Again, just to wrap it up, looking at your fulfillment process, being deliberate about how you engineer the order life cycle from beginning to end, putting the right systems in place to support it, those are all important to ensuring your success in the e-commerce space. And with that, I will turn it back to our moderators so we can have the Q&A portion of the webinar.
Thanks, Clint. I am seeing a couple questions come through, which is great, so keep them coming. First one, Clint, I think this one's for you. If you're not sure if your shipping process is optimal, where do you start if you want to analyze it?
Okay, well, I think if you're going to analyze your current your shipping process, you start with the current process. And what I would recommend actually is mapping it out, actually flowchart it, identify all the steps in the process. And I can tell you from experience that the number of companies who have actually formally documented their shipping and fulfillment processes is almost zero. Instead, it's more like tribal knowledge that they know and something that's kind of evolved organically. So I'd recommend, start with flowcharting, start with mapping it out, identify any systems that are involved, identify data that's needed in the process, where that data resides, what paperwork needs to be generated, and also keep in mind that with everything that happens in a warehouse, there's a physical process and a logical process. The physical process is what physical steps employees have to take in the warehouse, and the logical process has to do with the data that's in support of those processes and that's flowing around behind those processes. Both the physical and the logical parts are important to understand when you're putting together the picture and looking to make improvements. And you can also do time studies. You can measure how quickly or how slowly certain activities are being performed in the process. All those things are important to understanding the overall picture of the current process. Once you've got that information in front of you, more often than not, any inefficiencies are going to become very apparent. Even though a lot of companies don't formally document their processes, a lot of them just kind of inherently know what problems they're suffering from. They may have KPIs in place and they're not hitting the targets. And if you don't have KPIs in place, it's a good time to draw up some KPIs as you're looking at, what goals you want to achieve with your fulfillment operation. But once you got everything there, and I would include the stakeholders from different departments, include warehouse workers, those feet on the street that sometimes they've got secret gripes that haven't made it up the chain, and it's good to hear from them. And include your vendors, include existing vendors, potential vendors, and talk all that over so you can focus on fixing the right things the right way in flow charting and engineering an improved process.
All right. So this next one says, you did a great job of outlining the current problems and what we need to do to get better. Could you go into a little bit more detail on what you can do to help us? So I don't know if both of you want to talk a little bit to that, maybe.
Yep, this is Ken. I'll chime in first on that, and Clint, I'll let you then add to it. I'll say this, I outlined several, challenges that are typically out there, typically had by distributors entering and trying to keep up with, fulfilling B2C or direct-to-consumer type orders. Talking about, as I talked about, ways to approach it from the systems perspective. What you want to look for in a system. Getting into specifics there. I mean, all those system-related comments. You want a system that has integrated EDI, that has validations, can validate addresses, can, produce the paperwork and labels at the correct point in time, can help reduce the number of touches, if you will, to the products or the boxes, as Clint alluded to as well. Again, more specifically, then, a solution like the Apprise ERP, as well as with ProShip, we have all of that, all of those features, all of those functionalities, present today within the system. So, I mean, absolutely, I think both of our teams are ready, if you will, to jump on board and consult with and introduce you to the solutions that we have.
Okay, Clint, did you want to add to that?
No, I think Ken is spot on. I mean, it's kind of like the short answer is give us a call. Let us work with you. We like to take that consultative approach, and like I said in my previous answer, involving the vendors and looking at those problems, identifying problems, and being part of the conversation on engineering new processes and bringing new solutions to bear is important. So we'd be glad to be part of that.
All right. So the next question asks, is your solution being used for any retailer to provide real-time shipping costs to customers buying on the web?
And I assume that was directed to me at ProShip, and the answer is yes. Our solution operates in a variety of ways, but one of them is as an API. So if on your website you need to make calls out to a solution like ours with things like weight and dimension, ship to address, ship from address of an order, then we can return the different ship methods that are available and the costs. You also find that a lot of the shipping, the e-commerce programs that are out there, some of them will make calls out to the carrier APIs directly. That's in a lot of cases kind of embedded functionality that they have, and a lot of our customers choose to keep that in place just because it's already there. But in a lot of cases, because that's not meeting their needs, maybe it doesn't give them the flexibility, it doesn't support the carriers that they want to be able to display rates for in their shopping cart, or maybe there are concerns about the sheer volume of transactions that go through that, and current integration can't keep up with that. Some of them will turn to using and leveraging the ProShip API to integrate for getting rate costs up front.
Okay. Next question, what version of Apprise is compatible with ProShip?
Okay, from the Apprise side, or with the Apprise ERP, the integration with ProShip, us again seamlessly integrating with ProShip behind the scenes. So again, your staff utilizing the Apprise ERP really don't at that point don't know that ProShip is there, but yet they're the ones providing all that magic there that happens. That integration is standard in our version 8. So the integration, if you will, with ProShip is their standard in version 8. I will say, if you're on a version prior to that, I'd ask you, if you're interested, I'd ask you to absolutely speak to your account manager.
All right. This question, your presentation touched many good points, which we're currently experiencing. Do you have any solutions pertaining to reverse logistics, such as RMAs, shipping returns, etc.? I don't know which one of you wants to tackle that one.
Yeah. So I guess there's a lot of aspects. I'll begin there. There's a lot of aspects related to returns process. You know, the shipping execution part of that is certainly something ProShip does. So that has to do with, you know, making the carrier compliant return services available inside your process. So that's definitely something we do. We support the return services, whether those are services that involve pre-printing a label and including that outbound with the original outbound box. That's very common. Or also those services that email maybe an image of a label or a link to a label to the consumer. So we support all those things as part of a ProShip transaction. Also, though, an important thing there, going back to tracking how you manage your returns and what you do, the steps that you do whenever you get a box back. If you have special labeling requirements, like maybe at the bottom of a return label, you want to include a portion of extra information, maybe some barcodes, something like that, that's barcoded at the bottom of that return label. That's certainly something that you can print out and you can include as part of the outbound return label for processing and ProShip. It can really help you as you restock and you process your returns. In terms of, like, you know, tracking and keeping track of all the returns and the detailed process, or maybe having a portal online for customers to go to, that's really outside of ProShip's specialty. So we don't have anything like that. But when it comes to executing on the return and making those types of service options available, like I mentioned, and we certainly support that part of it.
Awesome. One last question until the time we have. Is ProShip a supplemental tool to Nicola? I don't know what that.
Yeah, and so in terms of what ProShip can integrate with, we've got a very tight integration with ERPs, you know, such as Apprise. And then in terms of integrating to other ERPs that are out there and supplementing those ERPs with shipping execution and rating capabilities, we have integrated to dozens of various ERPs that our customers have had. So generally speaking, because we have an open architecture at ProShip, we have not really found a challenge that we can't meet with the integration capabilities inside of ProShip. So I'm not personally familiar with Nicola ERP, but we'd be glad to talk with you about possibilities to integrate that and to help you with adding shipping capabilities into your process there with Nicola.
All right. So it looks like that's all the time we have for questions. If we didn't get to yours, we'll be sure to follow up with you on that offline. If you think of any questions at a later time or would like to speak with someone directly at either ProShip or Apti Enterprise, please feel free to use the contact information that you see on the screen. But with that, thank you, Ken and Clint, for your presentations, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.